The auction house was closing in 10 minutes when Marcus Chen noticed the painting wedged behind a broken filing cabinet. He'd been emptying trash cans at Whitmore & Associates for 3 years. And in all that time, he'd learned one crucial lesson. Rich people throw away more than poor people could ever dream of keeping. But this wasn't trash. Not exactly. The canvas was small, no bigger than a placemat. Its frame chipped and dusty. Marcus pulled it free, careful not to tear the yellowed paper tape to the back. In the dim light of the storage room, he could make out a woman's face painted in bold, confident strokes. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that seemed to follow him across the room. There was something about her expression, a mixture of hope and sadness that made Marcus's chest tighten. He glanced at his watch. 9:47 p.m. His daughter Lily would be waiting at Mrs. Patterson's apartment, probably already in her pajamas, clutching that stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 2. At 8 years old, Lily was becoming more curious about the mother she'd never known, the woman who died in childbirth. Taking with her all the stories Marcus would never be able to tell, Marcus studied the painting again. Something nagged at him, a whisper of recognition he couldn't quite place. He flipped it over. The tape had loosened over the years, and beneath it, he found a small card in elegant handwriting. Self-Portrait 2015 Sarah Chen. The world stopped. Marcus's hands began to shake. Sarah Chen, his wife. But that was impossible. Sarah had never painted. She'd been a nurse working double shifts at County General, dreaming of the day they'd have enough saved for a real house with a backyard. She'd died before Lily ever took her first breath. Before Marcus learned what it meant to be both father and mother, before he understood that love could exist alongside a grief so deep it had its own gravity, he sank onto an overturned crate. The painting clutched against his chest. The woman in the portrait looked like Sarah, or at least how he remembered her. But Sarah Chen was a common enough name. This could be anyone. Had to be anyone because if it was his Sarah, it meant there was an entire part of her life he'd known nothing about. Marcus wrapped the painting in his jacket and finished his rounds in a daze. He clocked out at 10:15, nodded to Jerry at the security desk, and walked the 12 blocks to Mrs. Patterson's apartment because the bus fare was money better spent on Lily's new school shoes. The next morning, after dropping Lily at school, Marcus did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He called in sick to his day job at the grocery store. Instead, he took the painting to the public library and asked the reference librarian for help. Mrs. Kim, a patient woman with reading glasses on a beaded chain, showed him how to search online databases for local artists. 2 hours later, they found it. An obituary from 2016 published in a small community arts newsletter. Sarah Chen, 28, promising local artist and nursing student, passed away unexpectedly. She is survived by her husband Marcus and infant daughter Lily, memorial service private. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the Community Arts Center. Marcus read it 3 times. Nursing student. She'd been in nursing school when they met, yes, but she'd never mentioned art. Not once. Why would she hide something like that? Mrs. Kim placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. The newsletter mentions the Community Arts Center. They might have more information. The center was a renovated warehouse in the old district. The kind of neighborhood where coffee shops with mismatched furniture sat next to stores selling vintage records. Marcus felt out of place in his work pants and worn jacket. But the young man at the front desk, his name tag read Devon, smiled warmly. "I'm looking for information about an artist," Marcus said, sliding the painting across the counter. Sarah Chen. She might have been a student here. Devon's eyes widened. "Oh my God, Sarah. I haven't thought about her in years." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through old photos. She took classes here in 2015, right before he stopped looking up at Marcus. "Wait, you said your name was Marcus." "I'm her husband." "Was her husband?" Devon's face went pale. "Come with me. There's someone you need to meet." He led Marcus through a maze of studios to a small office where an older woman sat surrounded by canvases. She looked up and Marcus saw her eyes fill with tears. "You're Marcus," she whispered. "You have her eyes. I mean, your daughter must have her eyes." She stood, extending a shaking hand. "I'm Eleanor Rodriguez. I taught Sarah here." Eleanor explained everything. Sarah had enrolled in painting classes 6 months before Lily was born, coming twice a week after her nursing shifts. She'd told no one about it, not even Marcus, because she wanted to surprise him. She was planning to paint a mural in the baby's room, a garden full of animals and flowers. But the classes became more than that. They became Sarah's sanctuary, a place where she could be more than a future mother, more than an overworked student. She could just be herself. She was talented, Eleanor said, pulling out a portfolio. Really talented. She talked about you constantly. How you worked 2 jobs so she could finish school. How you'd rub her feet every night even though you'd been on your feet all day. She was painting a collection for you, Marcus. She called it The Things We Build Together. The portfolio contained a dozen paintings. Marcus and Sarah dancing in their tiny apartment kitchen. Sarah's hands cradling her pregnant belly. The view from their fire escape at sunset, a blank canvas waiting to be filled, the future they'd planned. She finished that self-portrait the week before. Lily was born, Eleanor continued. She was so excited to show you everything. She'd booked a private showing at the center for your anniversary, but then she was gone. Marcus finished, his voice breaking. Eleanor nodded. After the funeral, I tried to reach you. I called the number on her registration form, but it had been disconnected. I held on to her work, hoping someday she looked at the paintings. She wanted you to know that even in the hardest times, she was finding beauty. She was building something. Marcus couldn't speak. All these years, he'd carried the weight of being enough for Lily, enough love, enough strength, enough answers. He'd thought Sarah had left them with nothing but memories and a name. But she'd left them this proof that even in uncertainty, she'd been creating. Even in exhaustion, she'd been dreaming. Even in darkness, she'd been finding light. That evening, Marcus picked Lily up from school with the self-portrait under his arm. At home, he hung it in her bedroom and told her everything about the classes, the secret collection, the mural that was never painted. Lily stood in front of her mother's portrait for a long time, studying the face she'd only seen in photographs. She has kind eyes, Lily finally said. She was kind, Marcus agreed. She was building something beautiful for us. The next week, Eleanor invited them to the Community Art Center. She'd organized a small exhibition of Sarah's work. The Things We Build Together, finally shown to the world. Marcus stood in the gallery with Lily's hand in his, surrounded by strangers who studied his wife's paintings and saw what he'd always known. Sarah Chen had been extraordinary. A young couple stopped in front of the self-portrait. There's so much hope in her face, the woman said, like she knew something wonderful was coming. Marcus squeezed Lily's hand. Something wonderful had come. It was standing right beside him, growing taller every day, asking questions about the world and the mother who'd painted beauty into darkness. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Marcus sat in front of Sarah's paintings and understood the gift she'd left them. Not just art, but evidence. Evidence that love doesn't have to be loud to be profound. That people contain infinite mysteries even when you think you know them completely. That the things we build, whether they're families or futures, or small acts of creation and stolen moments, outlast us. In the morning, Marcus returned to his janitor job at the auction house. But now, when he emptied trash cans and swept floors, he looked a little more carefully at what people left behind. Because sometimes, wedged between the forgotten and the discarded, there are entire worlds waiting to be discovered. Sometimes a single painting can rewrite everything you thought you knew about love, loss, and the beautiful things people build in the spaces between their struggles. And sometimes a father and daughter can find the mother they thought they'd lost. Not in memories, but in the brave, hopeful brush strokes she'd left behind, a map back to who she'd been and forward to who they'd become.